Greetings, and welcome to the 18th episode of Morrowind Modding Interviews. With me today is Danjb, the author of Trouble at Sea and Advanced Persuasion. Thanks for agreeing to do this interview.
Thanks for having me.
And right away, we're going to get started with a few basic questions. The first of which is, when did you first start playing Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls in general?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. A long time ago is the short answer. I think it must have been around 2005, because that was when I released my first mod, and I think I started modding pretty soon after I started playing the game.
Now, just out of curiosity, how much of the original Morrowind have you played through over the years, and how long after starting it did you decide to start modding it?
I think I've played through the vast majority of the game. I've played through the main quest several times. I've probably done all of the Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Thieves Guild. I've never really done anything, or I haven't really done that much involving the Great Houses. When I first got Morrowind, I didn't actually like it that much. It took me a while to get into it. But then, yeah, I guess I just picked it up again one day and thought, wow, this is amazing. And soon after I discovered the construction set, and when I found out just how easy it was to make a mod, I mean, I made a really simple mod just to sort of test it out. I just put in a massive sword in Seydanine, and it just worked, and I was amazed, and so that kind of got me into modding it.
Oh yeah, I think everyone sort of just got to start making a small cheat mod here or there when they first opened up the construction set. Now, my next question is, what was your first mod, and how did you get the idea for it?
My first mod was Moon Sugar Plantation, which basically just adds a small house where there's a Khajiit farmer who's growing some moon sugar. And I got the idea for that, I think just because I saw this marshmallow stuff growing and I thought, oh, that looks kind of like sugarcane. And I heard someone, I think there's some dialogue somewhere in the game where someone says, oh yeah, moon sugar, you know, people have tried to grow it in Vardenfell, but it just doesn't seem to grow here. You know, they haven't had any success. And I just thought, put two and two together, that could be quite a fun little mod. I would have been just 13 when I made that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that on Morrowind Modding History, and I believe the current version is version 1.4, isn't it?
Yeah, I've revisited it a couple of times since I first put it out, because that was my first mod. I was pretty rusty, and to be honest, if I went back to it today, I'd probably just completely remake it. I've, you know, picked up a lot of new skills over the years, and looking back, I always find, oh, what was I thinking?
Oh yeah, that really never goes away. It's basically every time you progress forward in something like modding, it's like you go back and look at something from a few years ago, and it's like, I would just completely redo that today.
Exactly.
Now, what draws you to modding video games?
I really like being able to create things, and I think that's partly why I like Morrowind so much, is you can really create anything you want. It's like you have this whole world to play with. And also, sometimes I like being able to enhance the game in a way that I feel would make it more enjoyable for me. So I might just come up with an idea. I might think, this game's great, but how about if I did this, or maybe I could fix this. So yeah, I mean, I come from a game development background, so when I see something that I think I could change that, you know, maybe this would be more fun, I like to try it.
No, I actually didn't know you came from a game development background before. What exactly is it that you do in the game development field?
Well, it's been kind of a hobby activity up until recently. I've been making games sort of as a hobby for probably about as long as I've been modding Morrowind, about 10 years. And recently so as a job, I'm a software developer, but I've recently gone to part-time, so I do that 4 days a week, and every Friday I am working on a game just at home by myself.
So you're sort of working on your own indie games, would you say?
Yeah, basically. I hope that one day I'll be able to sell it.
Oh yeah, that's the dream after all, isn't it?
That is the dream.
Anyway, sort of going on to another set of questions that go into that whole unique concepts of your mods. You've done a lot of really random and very interesting different types of mods over the years, from the Lucky Pick with scripted treasure hunting to quest mods like Trouble at Sea and the Magic Rings. How exactly do you get the ideas for all these very different mod concepts?
To be honest, a lot of the time they just come to me completely randomly. I might just be going about my business and I'll get an idea and I'll write it down. And a lot of these ideas I never actually got around to implementing. So one day I remember I'd been hoarding these ideas, and one day I just thought, I'm probably never going to get around to making these. And so I published a huge list. You can still find it, I think, if you type into Google Danjb's list of bountiful mod ideas or something like that. So a lot of them just kind of came to me, and sometimes I'll just make a mod out of it straight away. Other times, kind of taken ideas from other games. So I'll play another game, I think I really like that concept, and then I'll just try and put that into Morrowind. Sometimes just trying to give it a bit more replayability.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that you do make a lot of mods that seem to have a focused element on gameplay, like, with the Lucky Pick, Shortchanged, Fake Gold, and Advanced Persuasion. That, sort of just make the game more interesting and at times also more difficult. Are there any other new gameplay features you'd like to see implemented someday, or are planning to do yourself?
Yeah, there was one that I really wanted to do, but I never got around to, which was the idea that you can clear your own name. So currently, if you steal something, which you often have to do for quests, and you get caught, you get a bounty. The only ways you can resolve that are by going to the guards, which is always just a real pain because they take away all your stolen goods, or you go to the Thieves Guild and pay like half the amount. And I wanted to make another way of clearing your name. So my idea was that you'd sneak into the Ministry of Justice, I think it is, that floating rock above Vivek, or something like that, and basically find a book containing, criminals of Vardenfell, and you can kind of cross out your name in that book, and thereby clear your name and clear your bounty. That was a more sneaky approach.
Oh yes, there weren't really a whole lot of options in Vanilla Morrowind for, sort of getting rid of your bounty. It's like what I would always do is I would, sneak around the edge of town until I could get to the Thieves Guild and just get rid of my bounty that way, but it's not really very dynamic.
Yeah, for a game that boasts a lot of choice, it's kind of limiting, because if you don't want to join the Thieves Guild, then you're kind of screwed.
Now, in the past, you made a mod called Morrowind Achievements, which is one of the only achievement mods for Morrowind outside of the Census and Excise mod by Great House Fligerty. As far as I know, though, Morrowind Achievements is still in beta. Do you have any plans to finish it someday?
Yes, I would like to finish it. I put it in beta because I thought this is very different. People might not like this. I wanted to get a bit of feedback, basically. And there was one feature in particular that I am definitely planning on removing, and that is, as well as keeping track of achievements, it keeps track of a load of stats, and I just wanted to add in as many different kinds of stats as possible, and one of those was conversations. And so, yeah, this was very experimental, but every time you spoke to an NPC for the first time, it would increase this conversations stat. But what that meant was every time you spoke to an NPC for the first time, you got presented with this sort of dummy dialogue entry, and then you had to close the window and talk to them again, I think. I think it was something like that. So I'd really like to remove that, polish it up a bit, and release it again. Just finding the time, getting around to it.
Oh yeah, there's, so many ideas to make mods for and only so very limited amounts of time. Now, a lot of your mods tend to have a sort of random element to them, like God, Search, Fake Gold, and unique items. Do you find that having a random chance of success or failure adds to a mod's appeal?
I think it can do. I think it can add a bit of replayability. And in the case of my unique items mod, I found that in Morrowind I was just always being attacked by, rats, cliff racers, whatever else. And it felt a bit pointless after a while, especially once, I'd got a few skills up to max, because I wasn't really getting experience anymore. They were just a nuisance, and I thought if I could add in some kind of random element to make it so that you have a chance of getting a rare item when you kill them, then suddenly killing them is no longer pointless. That was the logic behind there. So, of course, now I just use, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a mod which makes creatures less hostile.
Oh yeah, and Morrowind is kind of weird in that respect that, random generic creatures don't actually drop anything interesting. A lot of RPGs like World of Warcraft or Diablo, they drop random items, even from rats or spiders or, what have you. But Morrowind, it's just, rat meat or nothing.
Yeah, it is a bit like that. It can become just a bit of a chore when all these monsters are attacking you constantly and you just can't be bothered with them anymore.
Now, I've noticed that while your mods are sort of all over the place in terms of content, most of them are pretty lore-friendly. Do you strive to maintain a degree of lore-friendliness when you make your mods?
I do try, more so now, I think. So when I first started modding, and when I first got into the game, I wasn't really that familiar with much of the lore. I would just make, whatever seemed like a good idea at the time. Didn't really think too much about the lore, but now I've come to appreciate it a bit more. So I do like things to be a bit more lore correct where possible.
Now, you've also made a ton of, very diverse mods, but are there any that stand out as your personal favorite out of the ones you've released?
Yeah, my favourite mod that I've released is actually Shortchanged, which is a very simple mod. It just changes some game settings to make it a bit harder. But it's one of the only mods that I always play with now, because normally Morrowind is it's so easy to get money. Money becomes irrelevant very quickly, but when I play with this mod, suddenly money becomes very valuable again. So I guess again that comes down to replayability. It just makes the game a bit harder to progress, and therefore slows it down a bit. You can play for longer, I guess.
Sort of moving on to some more general modding questions. Do you do any planning before you start a mod, and if yes, how?
Usually I do, but it depends on the mod. Sometimes if an idea comes to me and I think, oh, I could make that easy, I'll just spontaneously make it sort of in an evening or a day. So if it's a simple mod like that, generally I won't plan it. And a lot of my mods are quite simple. They're just very experimental concepts that usually it's just a couple of scripts or small changes, so it doesn't really need any planning. But mods that are a bit more complicated, I will plan them. So, for instance, if a mod involves a lot of loot, I'll sort of plan where the different loot is going to be given out. Like in Lucky Pick, I had to plan which loot would go in which type of chest, because the more buried treasure you find, the better the chests get. So I needed a sort of progression of loot.
Now, have you been influenced by any non-Elder Scrolls games when you mod?
Yes, definitely. A lot of my mods have been inspired by other games. Usually, you can tell quite easily if you've played any of them. So, in particular, Diablo 2, I think I've taken quite a few ideas from there. RuneScape, I used to play that a long time ago. I took a few ideas from there. And Final Fantasy 9 as well. Bit of a variety.
Now, sort of on a similar note, are there any modders who have inspired or influenced you in some way? And if so, what was it about their work that inspired you?
Yeah, there's one modder called Mana User. I don't know if he's still around, but I would say I have been inspired by him because he's made some really cool mods. I think you've shown off some of them, like Chalk. But he also made a pack of mini mods, which are just generally very simple ideas, but they can make a big difference to the game. So the favorite of them is the mod called Show Arrow Damage, because it's so simple. It just puts the damage of different types of arrow into their names, which is something that you would otherwise not be able to find out in the game. And so, yeah, something so simple but such a good idea, that's inspired me, because I kind of like mods that are simple but make a big difference to the game like that. And I think a lot of my mods are of a similar vein. So yeah, definitely Mana User, and also Melchior Dark, because just looking at his exteriors, they're just incredible, and he just creates them so quickly. It's unbelievable. And also Dark Nut, I would say, because his texture replaces and that sort of thing. I've never really been any good with textures myself, but his work is just amazing. I just consider it kind of an upgrade to the vanilla game. I wouldn't play without it.
Oh yeah, Mana User is a very talented modder, and also he is actually still around. I don't believe he's modding at the moment. His computer died, so he's sort of out of luck there, but he has made a lot of really great mods, like the Wanderers of Solstein, Chalk, and just, a bunch of stuff, like Map Deluxe, which is a small mod, but, it does make a difference when you have a complete map of all the travel destinations in your inventory.
Yeah, he has made a lot of cool mods. I think it's probably a bit backwards in a way that, I've chosen the absolute smallest mod he could have possibly made, and I said that's my favourite one. I'm sure the other mods are really cool as well. I don't mean it in a bad way that the smallest one is my favourite. It's just happens out that way.
Oh yeah, and Melkor is also a really great modder. He finally released Lithodonia, earlier this month. Finally, he was actually 2 months late. We were pressuring him to release the alpha within a 6-month time frame, and he did get it out, but it was 2 months late. So, got to pick on him a bit for that.
Yeah, I remember pressuring him in the interview. That was absolutely hilarious.
Now, what modding projects are you currently working on?
At the moment, I'm working on a small house in Mod Town, but that's kind of it. Originally, I'm still really excited for Mod Town, but originally I thought, oh yeah, I'll get really into houses and caves and quests, and now that I've actually got back into modding a bit, kind of had to scale back my sites because it's just such hard work and it takes such a lot of time, and I'm not sure I'm going to have that much time, but I'd still like to be quite involved in that where possible. So, but yeah, just a small house for now, and I'll see how that goes.
Oh yes, it's good to hear that you're planning to stay involved with Mod Town, and for our listeners, you should all get involved in Mod Town as well. It is a project for the community, by the community, Absolutely. As I keep saying,
Yeah, everyone should get involved with Mod Town. Let's make it something special.
Now, sort of going to a different type of question, do you listen to any music while you mod, and if so, what do you like to listen to?
Yeah, I'm always listening to music when I mod, otherwise I'll just be sitting in silence. Generally, I'll just have iTunes on shuffle.
Now, have you gotten any help from other modders with your mods over the years? And if so, how have other modders helped you?
Yeah, a long time ago, sort of when I first started modding, if I had a scripting question, I would post it on the forums. And I'm pretty sure I got a lot of help from Mana User and Abbott. But these days not so much, because scripting I find it a bit easier now that I've got a bit of a programming background. But Gan and his scripting for dummies is always incredibly helpful. And Melchior, actually, he's the only person I think I've ever really collaborated with. I made my Draggle-Tail Torches mod. He offered to make a model for the Draggle-Tail when it's being held.
Oh yeah, and Ganbury Gans, Morrowind Scripting for Dummies it is an amazing resource, really. It covers everything you really need to know to get started with Morrowind Scripting. It's like, people keep telling me that they don't want to get involved with quest mods or with scripting because it seems, kind of scary, that it's difficult, it's like programming. But, with a guide like Morrowind Scripting for Dummies, it's very simple to just open that up, figure out what you want to do, and then make it in the construction set.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're programming, you'll have documentation for a language that you're using. And it's just the same with Morrowind. If you're scripting, you need this reference. What Ganbury Gan has created is so much better than the documentation that's built into the construction set. I really couldn't get by without it.
Oh yes, definitely. And, since you mentioned it, this is kind of a random question, but since we both come from computer science backgrounds, what I've noticed a lot with, more recent mods, in the Skyrim modding community in particular, is that they don't include README files in their downloads. And, when I was taking computer science courses at university, it was hounded over and over again that you have to have proper documentation. And, that's actually probably what the majority of the work was in university. It wasn't programming so much as it was, documentation, software documentation. And it just kind of seems to me that people are sort of missing out on that documentation aspect when they're making mods these days.
I don't know if it was like that so much for me at uni. I wasn't really pressed to document things that much, apart from in the code itself. I'm in the habit of commenting it quite thoroughly. So although I will release a README with a mod, there's also a lot of documentation in the scripts that no one's ever going to read. But if they want to check them out, hopefully there are enough comments that you can kind of understand what's going on. But yeah, I do think it's important to supply a README with a mod, because you might want to know, say, who the author is or what the version is at a later date if you're interested in seeing if there's been an update or something like that. Or you might need to know what files came with the mod, or if there are any special steps to install it. And for a simple mod that just has, like, let's say a plugin, I can see how a README is not, some people might not see it as essential, but it's still useful to have. And I think someone recently wrote a huge guide about READMEs on the forum. I think it was maybe Illuminial or something. Wrote this guide, which was quite interesting.
Oh yeah, that was Illy, and that might have sparked a little bit of controversy on the forums. But what I find really interesting from a historical perspective is that, if we look at history, README files are incredibly important. Like today, we have a bunch of mods that were made from 2002, 2003 that we still have, thanks to the incredible work at Morrowind Modding History and Great House Thligety. But because they didn't include README files, we don't even know who the authors are. They're just listed as unknown. We oftentimes don't know what the mod does exactly, and we don't know how to install it. So it's still available for download, but we don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, from that perspective, READMEs are really important just to stop the mods becoming too obscure from time.
Anyway, sorry for sort of going off topic, but our next question is how much do you use the community to get feedback and motivation for your mods?
Pretty much a lot. So when I post a mod, or when I make a mod, publishing it is kind of the moment that you look forward to, because if you make a mod, you can get some fun out of it for yourself, but really the highlight is seeing what other people think, and for other people to enjoy your mod and seeing other people enjoy it. So it's always a bit sad when you post a mod and you kind of get no comments, no feedback or anything. And that is quite demotivating. So yeah, I would say I look to the community quite a lot to keep me going on the modding front.
Oh yeah, and that small bit of feedback is especially important for, newer modders who are just getting started. When you publish your first mod, you kind of need a little bit of extra push, to just sort of keep on going and get constructive criticism on what you did right and what you did wrong.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's especially useful when you're just starting out, because you're bound to need some kind of feedback.
Now, are there any particular modder resources you like to use in your mods?
Not really, to be honest. I'm a pretty much vanilla guy. I don't tend to use new models or textures, or if I do use them, I'll often try and make them myself and do a pretty bad job of it. I don't know why. To me, it's just a hassle, and I find often new models. I mean, obviously, this isn't always the case because there are so many mods that do use models very effectively, but I find a lot of them look out of place in Morrowind, and I guess I just like to keep a very vanilla feel.
Oh yeah, that sort of just ties into the lore friendliness aspect of modding. And sort of going on, is there anything you've had to give up to mod, like playing more games or possibly your social life?
I'd say the main thing I've had to give up to mod is actually playing Morrowind. Often I'll mod it instead of playing it.
Oh yeah, but who really plays Morrowind these days anyway? I mean, we're all here just to make mods, I think.
Exactly.
Now, are there any skills you've learned from modding? And if so, have you been able to use those skills elsewhere?
I did try to pick up Blender, and I have used that a little bit, so I think Morrowind was useful in just pushing me towards that. Even though I've not done a lot with it, it's good to know that I could, if I needed to, make some basic 3D models. But I think the main thing I've learned from modding is just general kind of coding practice that you should, game development practice in general, I guess. When you make something, you've got to test it. And the number of times I've made something and released it without testing it, and then someone's immediately pointed out some game-breaking bug, and I've had to go back and fix it. It's I've definitely learned not to do that.
Oh yeah, modding is basically, I think, 50 to 75% just testing the mod. You have to go through, play everything, try and figure out the one aspect that the player is almost certainly going to try that you weren't going to try, and see if that breaks the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, sort of off topic, are there any games outside the Elder Scrolls series that you enjoy playing? And if so, what do you like about them?
Yeah, I typically like very old games, actually. So, already some of the ones I've mentioned, like Diablo 2 and Final Fantasy 9. I also like Doom quite a lot, which is a very old game. Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet and Clank, and a bit more modern, Team Fortress 2. I play a fair bit of that. But yeah, I don't really have that much time these days for games, so maybe that's why I like old games, is because that's when I actually had time to play games and a computer that would run them.
Oh yeah, some of those are my favorite classics as well, like Final Fantasy 9 and Spyro the Dragon. It doesn't really seem like it's been that long ago since they came out, but I guess it has been.
It's been a while, yeah, but they're timeless. I can always come back to them.
Now, if you could mod one other game that perhaps doesn't support mods, what would it be?
That would be a game called Anno 1602. So this is a series that's actually still going. Nowadays there's like Anno 2060 or Anno 1404 or whatever. The year changes with every game. But the first one was Anno 1602. And this was an absolutely fantastic game. I loved it. I still play it sometimes. But it's getting to the point now where it's so dated that it's quite hard to get it working on modern operating systems. And I would love to mod it and just bring it up to date, give it sort of widescreen support, make the multiplayer a bit more stable, a bit more fun, and maybe chuck in some new features.
Oh yeah, I've played some of the Anno games, but not a whole lot. It really seems like the kind of, strategy game that I would just get overly addicted to if I let it just sink in too much. So I always try to stay away from it.
Unlike Morrowind, which I'm sure you're not addicted to at all.
What? I've only been playing Morrowind for 13 years. I don't see what the problem is. Now, do you have a mod that hasn't received enough acclaim as you think it should have had? And if so, which one and why?
If you'd asked me this 5 years ago, I would have said, oh, all of them, My mods are so underrated. But actually looking at them now, with the goggles of hindsight, a lot of them aren't great. So the ones that I think are probably the most underrated are probably some of the more recent ones. So the Lucky Pick, which I made very recently, probably only got about 30 downloads. I don't know. I haven't counted. The Boots of Infernal Chaos I've revisited recently and just spruced it up a bit. And that's another very simple mod. It's a simple quest, but I think the boots are pretty cool. They leave a trail of fire wherever you walk, and I just really like that. And finally, Deadly Dagos, or Dagos, I don't know how you pronounce that. It just kind of gives all the Dagos different, like, random abilities that they have, like, when you get close to them. So scripted effects, like, basically it was copied from Diablo 2. So there's things like thorns, where if you hit them, you take damage. So it's just makes it a bit more challenging. You have to sort of prepare a bit more for those fights.
Oh yeah, the Lucky Pick, I really enjoyed. That was like one of the highlights to me of the Morrowind Marathon Month event. I was just really impressed with, what you were able to accomplish with this scripting, having this random treasure hunt. It just sort of adds a whole new gameplay feature to the game, and I can tell you from talking to the judges that a lot of them were really impressed with the mod as well on a technical scale.
Oh, thank you very much. I did enjoy making it.
But we'll have to try and improve the publicity there, I suppose. We'll maybe showcase it again on Morrowind Modding Showcases, maybe see if we can to get more people to try it out a bit.
And thank you, actually, because it was the fact that you hosted this modathon month that actually brought me back to Morrowind modding, so all credit to you.
Well, I'm glad to know that I could re-addict someone else to modding. I mean, you can never really leave Morrowind modding, you have to come back after all.
That does seem to be the case, yeah. That's a recurring theme.
Now, are there any mods or modders that currently have your attention in the community?
Open Morrowind, if that counts. Other than that, I'm very interested in trying out Danjb. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll definitely check that out because I know that's been in the works for a long time and it looks amazing.
Now, are there any mods you look at and think, I wish I made that?
Mana users show arrow damage. I think mostly though, yeah, I mean everyone brings something different to the table. So there are a lot of really great mods out there that involve new models and textures, and I could never really do anything like that. I mean, I guess I wish I was better at that sort of thing, but I wouldn't say I wish I made that. It's just more like I wish that guy made more. You know, I wish Dark Nut made all the textures in Morrowind.
Oh yeah, and he's still working on his texture mod, so that is distinctly a possibility in the future.
Awesome, I'll look forward to that.
Now, what do you think of Open Morrowind, and do you plan to make any Open Morrowind only mods once it's released?
I'm very excited for Open Morrowind. I must check the news page kind of every other day when I'm at work, just hoping for the next update. Regarding Open Morrowind only mods, I think it really depends what kind of new functionality they introduce. If it gets to a point where it becomes easy to do a lot of stuff that wasn't possible before, then I think I will definitely jump on that. Because in the past, I've been reluctant to use script extenders and that sort of thing because I want to keep my mods broadly compatible with everything. But if Open Morrowind is just sort of going to be a one-to-one replacement of Morrowind with some extra stuff added, then I'll definitely get on board.
You know, speaking of that, are there any features, systems, and/or mechanics that you're most looking forward to being de-hard-coded in Open Morrowind, or perhaps something that's on your wish list for being included in Open Morrowind?
Yeah, I mean, long-term solution, very long-term project, I think, multiplayer support for Morrowind. I would absolutely love to be able to just create a LAN game, play with my friend or my brother, just, you know, run around together and share items and that sort of thing. That would be amazing, and I would just play Morrowind forever. Other than that, maybe a really good modding API. I don't know if this is going to be possible, but I'd love to be able to write my own code and slot it into the game. So not necessarily a mod, but well, not a mod in the conventional sense, but an actual code mod that will change how the game functions.
Oh yes, I think that might be possible with Open Morrowind, since it's, you know, an open source engine. I know that they're planning to make it possible to add in new skills, attributes, and a bunch of other things that we couldn't do in vanilla Morrowind.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Really looking forward to all of that. And I think the team are doing an excellent job. I did try to get involved, but I just failed at the first hurdle. I couldn't get the thing to compile.
Oh yeah, and you know, sort of going into our last few questions here. What do you think about the other Elder Scrolls games like Oblivion, Skyrim, and the Elder Scrolls Online?
I played Oblivion and Skyrim. I really liked them actually. When Oblivion first came out, I was so excited because I was so into Morrowind at the time, and to find out they were making a new game, and I was, you know, checking out all the trailers, and it sounded like it was going to be incredible. And then it came out, and my computer could just barely run it. I mean, getting through the first chamber, like that prison system, was such a slog. And then I finally made it outdoors, and all the water was purple. So I had to kind of hack the game quite a bit to just get it to work. But I've played it quite a bit since then, and I do like it a lot. Although it doesn't compare to Morrowind. And yeah, same story with Skyrim. But played it a lot, really liked it. but it doesn't compare to Morrowind. And part of that is that both of those have always been very laggy for me, and I've had to play on the absolute lowest graphic settings, which kind of spoils the experience a little bit. I've never played Elder Scrolls Online, but I've heard it's not great.
Well, I'm certainly glad you added in that tidbit that it doesn't compare to Morrowind, because, we are a very Morrowind-based show, and our opinion is that Morrowind is vastly superior to all other Elder Scrolls games.
I would never have guessed that was your opinion.
I know, a lot of people are genuinely surprised when I tell them that. They always think my favorite Elder Scrolls game is Oblivion or something, and, obviously that can't be true.
How many copies of Morrowind do you own again?
It's around the 20 mark, I think? I can't remember.
20 copies?
Well, you need to have one on every computer, and then you need to have several backups in case friends need to borrow a copy. And then you need to have a few in your Steam gift inventory so that you can addict other people across the world to Morrowind. I mean, it's a process.
I dread to think how many copies of Oblivion you've got then, since that's clearly your favourite.
I believe I own 3 copies. And I own 2 copies of Skyrim, before you ask.
Okay.
Now, what do you think makes the Morrowind modding community so vibrant after more than a decade?
I think it is just this fact that people always come back. No matter how far you go from Morrowind, it always pulls you back. I don't know why that is. It's just such a good game with so much replayability, and you can get so immersed in it. I know for me, it's not only is it still a good game that I enjoy today, but I've got a lot of nostalgia associated with it, and like with all these old games that I still play, sure I'll be playing it in 10 years, 20 years.
Oh yes, I definitely know for a fact that I will definitely still be playing Morrowind in 10 to 20 years as well.
I didn't really answer the question though. Regarding the modding community, I think I've actually not been that involved with the community. I mean, I've posted occasionally, but mostly to just release mods. But I've watched the community by the forums and just read what's going on every now and again. And I know that a lot of people there have actually got to know each other quite well and formed sort of quite good friendships with each other. So not only is it a group of like-minded people who enjoy this game, but it's a really nice community, and I think everyone's really friendly to each other, and yeah, that's going to keep people coming back. It's just a nice atmosphere.
Oh yeah, and I think it's kind of important to highlight that even if, you're not really involved in the community, or if you've just been, sort of lurking in the shadows, posting occasionally, you can still make a huge difference in the community. I mean, you probably wouldn't have guessed this, but before 2014, I actually only had 25 posts on the Bethesda forums, and, I was a lurker, I didn't really post much. And now today, it's like I'm running a YouTube channel, so, really, you can make a difference if you want to.
So what would you say triggered this huge burst in posts and involvement?
Well, it was probably the feedback crisis of, the summer of 2014. I was talking to Melkor about how it seemed like, we had all these new modders joining the community and posting mods, but they weren't getting any feedback whatsoever on the Nexus, and I was concerned about that. So Melkor posted his Future of Morrowind thread, and that sort of led to a lot of projects. It led to the Morrowind Modding Wiki being created, Morrowind Modding Showcases, our YouTube channel, and it also restarted, I believe, the unofficial Morrowind patch project, or something to that extent. It led to a lot of things.
Okay, that sounds like things keep going along this road for a long time to come.
But anyway, we've sort of been getting off topic. Do you think there's anything the Morrowind modding community should be doing in order to continue to expand and grow in the coming years?
I think basically what you're doing is amazing. You've got, as you said, you've got so many people to come back. You've got so many people into the game, and that's incredible. That's really bringing new life to the community. I think other than that, people just need to keep doing what they're doing, keep coming back, keep making mods, and I think keep giving feedback, I guess, because that will keep other people coming back if they have the feedback on their mods or whatever. Just having that interaction can help a lot.
Oh yes, definitely. And is there any advice you'd like to give to budding new Morrowind modders out there looking to release a first mod?
Yeah, start small. When I first joined the community, I thought it would be a great idea to make a total conversion mod, and that was just the most ridiculous idea ever, and it fell completely flat. So start with something really small, really simple, that you're going to enjoy making. Yeah, and then release it. Make sure you take on board any feedback. Don't sort of get offended if people don't like it, because if it's your first mod, chances are it's going to have some problems.
No, yeah, definitely. Always a good idea to start small. I mean, I think we've all been at the point where, we thought we'd create a whole new world using the construction set, and it's actually a lot more work than you might imagine, so it's always better to start off with a small project and then work your way up to something massive like a huge new landmass or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Even a small project, even like a house, can take a long time, as I'm finding now.
Oh yes, and finally, is there anyone in the community you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, so Mana User, thank you for making some really cool mods and coming up with some great ideas, and for giving me scripting help all those years ago. And Melchior, you're doing some great work, keep it up. And Scrawl as well, who's obviously heading up the OpenMW project, or doing a lot of the coding there. You're doing a fantastic job. And finally, and I have no idea how to pronounce this, but Shortchanged, the guy who's worked on the Morrowind code patch, that is an incredible project. I think that's brought a lot of playability back to Morrowind. I know that probably going to be superseded by OpenMW, but in the interim, I mean, that makes a huge difference to the game. That brings a lot of really cool features there, and it's a very well-made project. And actually, I was interested in his work, and so I contacted him and said, how have you even done this? Because I'm very interested. And he was very helpful and gave me a lot of advice on getting started with this reverse engineering stuff that he uses. So thank you to Shortchanged as well.
Alright, that pretty much wraps up all the questions I have for you, so thanks for agreeing to do this interview.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Dark Elf Guy.